Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome, everyone, to the Rant Live, Tuesday, November 30th, one day from the CBA deadline. So that should be exciting. And we are getting to see the Cubs. I think we know now what spending intelligently means.
Getting old dudes who fill out positions of need, but not top line ones. It's weird.
Going with the sucking and not spending a lot of money because you know you're going to suck. And the only thing that's going to happen to make you not suck is you're going to have minor leaguers that somehow fill in and become all-stars. Sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, at least at this point, like it definitely does not appear as though anything splashy. I mean, who knows, right? You got until the clock strikes midnight
tomorrow,
right? Up to 11:59 on Wednesday, Eastern time. So there's still some time there. But
you're saying we got a chance.
Yeah, but it's super weird. Like the Miley thing kind of came out of left field, right? Yeah. That was a little bit weird, but it's like, okay, cool. Well, boy, if they're paying $10 million for a guy who's like a mid-rotation dude, who they're only going to have for the year, that feels like, okay, they could be spending some other money in other places, even if it's like, and I think that the assumption the whole time remains that if they are to do it, it'll be more like they'd pay a little more on an annual value for a guy, but for a shorter term. So if this person was normally going to command 4 or 5 years, maybe they'd try to get him for 2 or 3 at higher incremental value because they can afford to do that. They have the room in there, and then that doesn't muck up their future development too much. But I think what we're seeing in the market is that, understandably so, these guys, if you're north of 30, you're going to value, you're looking at it going, okay, well, I can get $44 million for 4 years or $45 million for 3. I think a lot of those guys are going, and I know that sounds weird, but I think a lot of them are saying, I'd rather have those 4 years. Or if you look at someone like a Javy Báez, right, he got an opt-out after 2 years. So there's other things in there where I think if you're saying I'm only going to get 3 years and I don't know if this team's going to be any good, they might suck for these 2 years. I might get traded out of that. I don't have as much security in that time. And I think the whole point of signing ahead of a lockout is that you're getting security. And, so we'll see. The Cubs could still do some stuff there, but boy, it does not give me a whole lot of confidence to think that they're going to maybe wait until after the lockout when it is going to, like, it's frenzied now. But what happens if you say, hey, the lockout's over on February 15th, and now it's time to report for spring training?
The Cubs' approach to spending intelligently is like waiting for the day after Christmas to buy Christmas lights, basically, and ornaments and everything like that, because they're going to get a good deal. They are going to get a good deal then.
Well, but the deal today, the Yan Gomes signing was real. I mean, I get it, right? Like on several different levels.
They need a backup catcher, but
yeah.
But they went out and got the
best
catcher.
Basically, they got the best available catcher in the free agency market. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's primarily a starter, and they're paying him $6.5 million a year. Granted, the guy's going to turn 35, or he is 35. He'll turn 36. I forget.
He's 34.
34. He'll turn 35.
Yeah.
He'll turn 35 in July. So still technically his age 34 season, because as we've talked about with the whole free agency thing, July 1st is what's considered your age as of July 1st is what they consider you for that season. But that was what was wild though. It's like they're not going, they're not signing pitchers, they're not doing any of this. And then Gomes, mind you, his last deal was 2 years and $10 million. So you don't normally expect the catcher who's 34 years old to get $3 million more over the same period with a $6 million option on the third year. And there's $1 million incentive every single year based on games played or games started. So that tells us they did not sign him just to be a backup. Now, I do want to make very, very clear. So on one hand, and this is my first thought too, is like, oh shit, they're going to trade Contreras. Like that's what this means. But if you look back at what Jed Hoyer talked about, he specifically mentioned, how much volatility they had in their backup catching, how Wilson, got worn out, how he needed to have more time off. You consider there's going to be a DH, and now you start thinking about it like it's less of a backup situation, more of a timeshare situation that allows Contreras to maybe flex out and you don't drop off a whole lot. But it's still a weird one because at the same time, like, it's not as if the Cubs had to keep running through guys because they got a guy and they were awful and they tried somebody else. They all got hurt. Like, people were, every single one of them was going on. And now, some of them got called up for,
it feels like you're trying to console somebody who just got diagnosed with terminal illness. That's what this feels like.
Well, I mean, but like,
it's hopeless, but you're trying to make me feel like it's not.
But I mean, I guess the issue, what I'm saying on the flip side, that was like, you sign this dude and you hope he's healthy, but like I said, the problem with their backups last year was that everybody kept getting hurt. So you can sign this dude for $6.5 million. That doesn't guarantee he won't get hurt. Like, the money you pay somebody doesn't make them healthy. But I do think that they're being realistic. We got the report that there have not been conversations with Contreras on an extension, and I think
troubling.
It is troubling.
I mean, the guy's on your team, for God's sakes. I mean,
and there's no Miguel Amaya.
Why would you not be having conversations with him? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and so
that's not intelligent.
No, it's really not. But I think a lot of what this is like they're saying, hey, we can go any number of different directions. We're comfortable having a timeshare / Gomes as the backup. But if a deal comes our way and knocks us off our socks and we're not going anywhere with an extension, we can trade Contreras. Now we have a starter. Now we can just go get cheap backups and stream those guys again. So there's a lot.
That just brings you, if they end up trading Contreras, it's just like, to me, the whole intelligent notion goes way out the window because you're not trying to win last year.
Right. And
I know, but why wait until, why? Obviously they're not, I don't think they're trying to win this year anyways, but I mean, they're not trying to lose, but they certainly aren't going all in. Why didn't they trade Contreras last year though? That's what I'm saying is that you could have traded him at the deadline.
Yeah, it's, or Hendricks at that point. I mean, keep moving these guys, but it's the worst part, is that we keep seeing all this stuff, right? And I know, and some people are like, blah, we told them we're going to spend, but it's not a matter of like us, quote unquote, writers, whomever, saying they're going to. It's more like they should and they could, right? Those things are there. And Tom Ricketts sent an email to all, and again, would depend on you taking him at his word, which nobody really does. But he sent the email, hey, we have the resources to be competitive. Like, they're completely full of shit. I mean, Jed Hoyer said they were going to be really active, which they have
them. They're just not deploying them.
Right. Well,
it's a big difference.
Resources.
I got a bunch of a wad of cash in my pocket, but I'm just not going to spend it.
But here's where people, I think, and here's where they keep hedging stuff, right? They keep doing this. Hoyer said we're going to be really active. He didn't say we're going to be aggressive, because there's a difference in that.
And by really active, we mean you're not going to see our activity,
right?
But we're going to be active.
We're going to talk to people. We're going to pick up a lot of minor league guys. We're going to comb through some non-tenders. We're going to go after the Rule 5, and then we're going to be really active once the lockout ends. That's different from being aggressive. Like, aggressive is going after, the John Grays or the Tyler Matzes or Steven Matzes, guys like that, like, and jumping on that and getting that and locking that in. And I think it's just really funny, the way this is all playing out. It's not funny, like, not ha-ha funny, but
like ironic funny.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, but I feel like everybody I pivot to, like, oh, hey, Steven Matz, that would be a pretty good fit because of this and this. Now, it's not great, but like that would fill a role. Or then I'll look at it and be like, but John Gray, boy, that would be really cool because I think the fastball can play up if they get him low. Nope, he got signed elsewhere. And then I'm like, you know what? Hell, you could even convince him. Michael Lorenzen, that'd be a great pickup because he throws hard. He's already got a 5-pitch mix. He actually keeps the ball on the ground very, very well. Keeps it in the yard in general. And, hey, on a short-term prove-it deal, no, he signed somewhere else. Like, all this stuff's happening. I'm like, I could find a path to all these guys fitting well. But where I really get into it, right, where I come into the problem is not so much whether and how much they're spending or not spending, as the case may be. It's that Jed Hoyer is sitting and saying, we need power arms. We need guys who throw hard and miss bats. Well, look at all of them who are out there, because you don't do that for shit in the starting rotation. They haven't in the last several years. The need is there, and yet all these guys are just coming off the board. Like, you said this was a need, and you haven't addressed it. And who are you going to find? Like, you don't go find a dude who throws 97, 98, who you're just going to pick up for $1 million randomly, who's a starter, in late February. Like, that is not going to happen. That's what I have the problem with. You're not, we can all identify these guys who are fits, and you're not going after any of them meaningfully in a way that could actually help solidify. If they expand the playoffs and you've got the Reds who are getting rid of everybody and the Pirates suck, there is no reason to believe they can't be a top 7 team in the National League and make a playoff, especially if it's a 3-gamer. But there again, you got
to have some pitching. Though.
Who knows, man?
You got to have some pitching,
right? Like,
got to do better.
A lot better.
They've got they're minor leaguers. They've got some potential in the minors, right? But it's not potential that's going to really come up and make an impact next year. I mean, I'd be real surprised to see that. We saw Ethan Roberts pitch really well, right?
Yep.
We saw who else has been pitched? Max Bain has been pitching really well, but these are young guys. They're not going to come up to this.
Well, and even if they are, like Roberts is a reliever, he just got added to the 40-man roster. He'll come up in relief. Braylon Marquez. Yeah. But he's been out. He's barely pitched in 2 years, and so they're going to have an innings limit on him. So he he'll be up, but it'll be as maybe an open. If he starts anything, it'll be as an opener, which really isn't a starter anyway. And probably late in the season. We've seen Justin Steele and Keegan Thompson come up and do okay. But they did much better when they were in relief roles. Now, again, some of that changes, right? Some of those things change. We've seen Caleb Killian dominated after he got a better feel for his curveball, and they started using the pre-tacked MLB baseballs in the Arizona Fall League. I mean, he threw 6 perfect innings in the AFL championship game. Like, that dude can be legit.
But is that going to happen next year?
It could. And at this point, it might have to, because they're not going to.
Here's worry about when they're moving these kids up from the minors to the majors so quickly is that they just haven't had enough time to fully develop. They get up to the major leagues, shit goes sideways, and then then it just creates this cycle where they have to go back down to the minor leagues again, kind of fix whatever was going on. And it seems like that's what's been happening in the last few years with the Cubs and some of their minor league guys. I mean, it happened with Schwarber, it's happened with Happ.
Yeah, and it's different, with hitters and pitchers and some of those guys makeups. I mean, you look at Killian's like 25 though, right? So he's been around for a little while. He's a college pitcher. That's a little bit different. I think the stuff is there. And that what I really like about him though is so many of these guys, you're trying to figure out, can they get their command in there? And he's already got elite level command. The issue is, does he throw too many strikes, right? To where, and of course, by that, I mean, like, it sounds weird. You want somebody who throws strikes, but you also want him to be able to command the zone versus just pumping fastballs right down the dick. And so, I don't think that's going to be a real issue with him. But my problem at this point is, like, who's left on the pitching market, right? And I know a lot of people like Marcus Stroman. I love, like, as a person, although he got into a little Twitter kerfuffle recently, as a person, I love Marcus Stroman. But Marcus Stroman's not a power pitcher. He's yet another dude who you would throw in there, and he does a better job than, Zach Davies did, certainly, or Jake Arrieta. But you're talking about a dude who's like 92, 93. He's barely throwing harder than anybody else they've had. He doesn't miss a lot of bats. He doesn't necessarily change the profile that they've got there. And that's
Hendo is only going to be hitting about 86 next year.
Well, he and Miley both. Miley brought down the Cubs average like 89.6 miles an hour on their fastball as starters. Miley brought that. He's like one of 2 people that could have picked up who would bring the average down, right? Rich Hill, just go get freaking Rich Hill. Just go all the way the opposite direction. And then you can get somebody who throws 92 and they feel like a power arm because nobody else even throws 90. It's just, oh my God. That's bothersome, right? Because you can get competitive quickly.
So the non-tender deadline or tender deadline, whatever you want to call it, is tonight, right?
Yeah.
At 6 p.m. I don't know when it is. So, with the CBA expiring tomorrow at midnight, does that give teams a window to be able to sign some of those non-tendered players, or is there a
Yeah, I
waiver
mean,
kind of
no, I mean they've
situation
got
going?
if they're not going to tender you a contract, you're a free agent. So they'd have
So
a
maybe something
day
comes
and a
out of
half.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys like Trey Mancini is somebody who they brought up, which would be wild to me. Like if the Orioles non-tender Trey Mancini after he got comeback player of the year for sitting out a year with colon cancer, right? I mean, the dude went through cancer and missed a season and then came back and won comeback player of the year. If they non-tender him with a low payroll and a shit organization in general, like what kind of a dick move would that be? Unless they're just saying, hey, we want to set you free to actually go play. You don't deserve to play for this team. You deserve to go have a chance somewhere else,
that may
anywhere
be it.
else. So maybe that's actually not that bad a deal there.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. I mean, not that that's exciting or anything like that, or the Cubs are going to be able to really fill any holes, And if they sign any of these players that are non-tendered, can they sign them to minor league deals?
I mean, it depends on most of those guys. Like, if do they even have any options left? Or there's some of them. Whether they want to, like Rex Brothers just signed he signed a minor league deal, I think, with the Brewers recently. So I mean, they could, if those guys, if that's all they think they can get. I think with a lot of these players, it's more a matter of, they're not going to be able to earn, or the team just doesn't want to pay, whether it be Mancini, $9 million or $8 million, whatever they think it's going to be. So that, that's somebody like Kyle Schwarber, right? Like Cubs didn't want to pay him, but that dude was clearly going to be able to go find himself a market. So I think most of them who we'll see are guys who the team just doesn't want to pay that amount of money. And we'll probably see them picked up somewhere.
If Kyle Schwarber was non-tendered this year, would the Cubs pick him up? He's not going to be, obviously, but if it was like last year, like would the Cubs be in the market for Kyle Schwarber? You think they wish they would have kept Kyle Schwarber?
Well, you think, I mean, at this point, like with the way that turned out, they could have, I mean, let's say, say he had the same start with them. Now, part of that, again, I think they were so blind to a lot of the issues that he'd had, and the Nats got him into that squattier stance, and some things were different there. But let's say he got off to that same start, and they still went through. Now, do they win more games? I mean, the whole calculus changes. But if we stick with, let's limit things to one factor, and they still suck, but he played just as well as he had. Should have him instead of Peterson. Who knows? Obviously, they get a hell of a lot more in return than jack shit, which is what they got for him by non-tendering him. Or realistically, they used that money. They paid Jock Peterson. They traded Jock Peterson for Bryce Ball. So, are things really any different in that regard? Probably not much. But I think it's more likely that if he was playing the way he did with the Nationals, I think it's entirely likely that the Cubs actually win a whole lot more games. They don't have that stupid losing streak after they no-hit the Dodgers. They're at the end of June and into July. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that change, and now all of a sudden you could be looking at a vastly. I think that one move, perhaps more than any other, changed the course of their season. Based on what he could have done.
And there's rumors that Javy Báez is signing a 6-year, $140
that's not a rumor.
Is it done?
That's done. Yeah,
it's done. Okay, so Javy signed a 6-year, $140 million, $23.3 million AAV, I think, something like that. Yep. With the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah,
God bless the Detroit Tigers, because I got nothing against the Detroit Tigers. I got no problem with Javy going there because I can root for him there. But it's just did not see that coming. But man, Detroit's they're stepping up, huh?
Yeah. Well,
what's their budget? Fucking better than the Cubs.
Well, yeah, and they signed Eduardo Rodriguez, right? They made the first big splash in the market in general, going to get the pitcher, who had a QO attached to him. So they went after that. They made the trade for Tucker Barnhart. So I don't think they're done there. And then the Cubs didn't try to lowball Baez. The Cubs gave him a really nice offer back in 2020, which again, interestingly enough,
what was that offer back in 2020?
8 years, 168.
So about the same AV.
Very similar. It's 21 million. It would have, 2 years ago, 8 years would have taken him to the exact same endpoint as this one. However, his current deal also has an opt-out after the second year, and he's got a partial no trade clause that he can block trades to 10 teams. And so those are much more typical. Those are the kind of things, those add value to it. And at the time, so here's the other thing. At the time, we're talking March of 2020, right? Prior to COVID ruining everything. He had just come off of 2 All-Star seasons. He was second in the MVP voting in 2018. He had a great season in 2019, and his value was never any higher than it was. So at that point, it's understandable. And then the talks broke down, right? So they say, he turned it down, but it was mostly like, hey, they were working on things. I think if the season continued, if there's no pandemic, he probably gets an extension worked out at that point. But that goes away. The 2020 season progresses. He plays like ass. And now all of a sudden, this is like they're going, whoop, we're going to pull back that 8-168 offer. Not doing that today. And last year was a little bit rough and it was transitional. So you see how that stuff happens. It was funny though, because at the time, and there's some jagoff who's in our who's decided to troll me. Like somebody made up a name to come on through our site and troll me in my post, which is kind of funny actually.
I'll have to check that out.
But I had joked about it at the time. I said I predicted, I think 6 years and 136 million. I said is what I think it would, what it would take to extend Javy. Now that was was in 22. So it's just more. It was funny. I said, hey, I predicted this 2 years ago. So it's like it doesn't. Things have changed drastically. It doesn't matter. But I just thought that was kind of funny. So, but that's a big deal. And they were after Correa. So now the market for Correa shrinks up significantly. I mean, the Rangers are out of it. The Tigers are out of it. You see all these teams. As Trevor Story's kind of still hanging out there. But there were some rumors last night that Correa was going to sign with the Angels, which was a little bit odd. The Dodgers need a shortstop, maybe, unless they're going to stick with Trey Turner. I mean, there's a couple of big things to happen. But yeah, I mean, Javy got paid. I think Hoyer, his comment that he thought their extension offers would stand up well, I think makes sense. But I think you're also looking at the calculus having changed dramatically since they actually had any of those talks and sat down and made real offers to any of those players, versus what's kind of ended up happening. So, yeah, but hey, Javy got paid. I'm excited. Tucker Barnhart and Javy Báez, I can cheer for the Tigers. I'm gonna buy a Tigers hat, just because I can, because I love hats. I have lots of hats, so whatever. Yeah. It'll be fun.
Tigers have never done anything wrong to me. In fact, I've got friends who like the Tigers, and so that makes it even better.
Yeah, I find, and it's funny because like they were good a few years ago, but by and large, I just find them to be. I'm just kind of agnostic to them in general. Like I don't really care. Like I forget that they're, hey, it's the Tigers. Oh yeah, neat. Okay. So I'm cool with that. They got a fun looking throwback hat that's got a goofy looking tiger on the front, and I'm gonna pick that up. And
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, so I'm that's gonna be my jam. And if Chris Bryant signs with the Blue Jays, I'm gonna buy a Blue Jays hat because that was my high school mascot, and then I can do that. So probably get a hat from just about wherever Bryant signs, unless it's the Mets or something like that. But
yeah, I mean that's right now. The Bryant's kind of kicking around. I don't know if he's going to end up signing before the deadline. You feel like he's probably going to, but
no,
you don't think so?
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay, I mean he doesn't really need to, right? But then you got to kind of sit and wait. Which nothing changes, obviously, from the time that, whatever happens today and tomorrow happens, and then you wait and nothing really changes. But, COVID showed us, if anything, and with this new variant, whatever is going to happen with COVID is going to, could digress the whole situation again. I don't know. So, I mean, from that perspective, I mean, if it was me, I would want to sign before the CBA lockout comes into play, just because of the uncertainty related to COVID, to be honest with you. I mean, you don't know where that's going to go. And if it ends up, it's hard to imagine we end up getting to a place where like there are no fans in the stands again. But God, it's you can't predict it either, so it's like, but you don't think Chris Bryant has any chance, but he is being spoken that it's the Blue Jays that are perceived favorites.
The Jays and Mariners, although somebody reported that we've heard the Phillies, the Mets are apparently still in there. Somebody reported the Cubs. I'm like, the Cubs aren't. If they're interested, quote unquote, it's one of those deals where somebody on Team Boris, I think, is trying to stir some stuff up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they'd be interested, right? Anybody could be like, "Hey, would you be
we're
interested in this brand new car?" Like, yeah, if it's $10,000,
I'm interested in
what I
that
mean?
Ferrari.
So, yeah, but I don't think,
Very
I know there's
interested.
been some comments on it. I don't think Bryant has said publicly, because I don't think Bryant said anything publicly.
Yeah.
I think one way or the other, though, the big thing with him is simply that he's going to want security, right? He's going to want it's, and this is not a direct comp, right? Because anytime you say certain things and everybody's thinking, oh, you're saying this is the exact same as this other, like, no, I'm not saying that at all. Just please, exercise a little critical thinking here. But when Bryce Harper signed in Philly, he wanted as long a term as possible, and he did not want opt-outs. He had no intention of opting. Like, that was his whole goal. And I think with someone like Bryant, that they would go, right. I mean, right. But that's somebody else saying it. Like, Bryant has not come out and said, I'm not going to do this, because that would be dumb. If a player straight up said, I'm not going to do, like, if the right deal came along, yeah, of course he'd sign it out. Say, hey, we're going to give you 12 years and X amount of money and a no trade clause and all this other stuff. Yeah, totally. I think he'd be all over that, because his primary goal there is to have that security, right? And to be able to know that he's going to be in his quote unquote forever home, that he's not getting shopped around. There's no trade rumors, stuff like that flying all over the place. I think that's really the big thing there. But I don't think that really happens. He hasn't gotten any offers. The top of the market is moving. The shortstops are moving. The pitchers are moving. But we really haven't seen a whole lot going on with the rest of the guys we talk about, Castellanos and Chris Taylor and Bryant and guys like that, the position player, outfield, corner, infield guys. We're hardly seeing anything on that front right now. Yeah. And so I think for that to really start moving is going to take some time. And I don't think it happens before the lockout ends.
Chances that Carlos Correa signs before the deadline tomorrow?
I think those are pretty high. I think
he signed with the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, hey, those chances I don't think are very high, but the market,
is it 10%?
Yeah, I mean, like 0.5 maybe. I mean, I know Jesse Rogers like, oh, he's not opposed to a rebuild. Well, no shit. If he signed it for 10 years, you're gonna be. Yeah, I was sure as hell hope if a team spent $300 million on you that they intend to compete at some point over the course of that decade that you're in there for. But that shortstop market's really hot. And if you look at a team, especially with the Rangers getting two of the top guys with Simeon and Seager, right? They locked both of those two up, and those were considered two of those top 5 shortstops, right? Now you got Javy off the board, and Story isn't really truly competition for Correa. He's more of a fallback kind of a thing. But if you get a couple of teams that really, really wanted one of those guys, and now, I mean, because, you could look at Houston, or it certainly doesn't look like they want to pay that money for him, but I can see him trying to take advantage of that market and how it's hot right now, because things are going to change dramatically by the time we come back around to it. So it's MLB source Robert Murray. But did Bryant say something, or did Murray say that he thought Bryant wouldn't want to, or that the sense is that Bryant wouldn't want to? I'm saying Bryant himself.
What are you talking about?
I'm just looking at the comments that Robert Murray.
See, sometimes Evan likes to reply to the comments, but the podcasters are
sorry.
People who listen
that was
to the
totally.
podcast
That was, I went out from.
What is Evan?
Yeah, I went from Correa to Bryant.
He talks to himself sometimes.
Yeah, but no, I do think Correa he'd probably be smarter to take advantage of it now. I don't think you're going to see teams get any hungrier to make that big splash than what they are right now. So we'll see. So, I mean,
I feel like Trevor Story is being highly undervalued here. And if you could go and if you could get him on a value, a good value, that would be spending intelligently. I mean, he's got upside, man. He's not an old guy. He's 29 years old. I don't know what kind of contract he's looking for, but I mean, he's got power. He hits for average. I mean, he had a down year, and he's been pretty healthy actually his entire career. I mean, don't you think there's value in Trevor Story? I mean, with him, it feels like he's being overlooked.
Well, I think a lot of people, whether you want to agree with it or not, in certain cases, some players defy it and not. But the Colorado numbers, right? It's the Coors effect. How many people look at that and they say, well, the road splits this, or I don't know how well that's going to hold up over time. So I think that's a big part of it, and just looking at how all those things kind of play. I think people see that and go, well, gee, I don't know. So.
Yeah, but you could also argue it's a home away split too, right? I mean, like most players typically hit better at their home ballpark than when they are away, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, most of them do. I think
you could argue that. You could counter with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways around. I think he's clearly the least highly valued of that group of shortstops. But as we saw with Javy Báez, right? The Tigers were supposedly all in on Correa, and it was a done deal. And AJ Hinch is down there having breakfast with him or whatever. But when you're talking about, I mean, Seager got $325 million. You think Correa is going to want to get less than that?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
He's going to.
They just spent 140.
Yeah.
They spent
and Story ain't getting half of that. Story might get around half of that. And so if you're looking at a team, you say, well, we like you, Carlos, but we're not going to do this. We're going here, over going low. So we'll see. Yeah,
I kind of think Trevor Story would work well for the Cubs. Do we want to talk about what's happening next week, or do you want to? We didn't talk about that before this show, but I'm bringing this up now.
Certainly
on our show next week. Yes. So, Evan, why don't you go for it? We are having a special guest. So newsflash, as we've been mentioning, the CBA does expire tomorrow. There is a lockout that is rumored to be in the works. And so that would mean there are no player movements after tomorrow at midnight, which means that we wouldn't have a whole heck of a lot to talk about for the next couple of months. So if you've been with the show for a while, we've been doing this show for a little while. In fact, our last episode was our 69th episode, just in case you were wondering. We didn't celebrate that because we're lame, but we would have had we thought about it. Anyways, so we've been doing this for a little while, and we started it back in April of, I think it was like April 9th, 2020. Right when COVID had hit, we didn't really have much going on. So we started the show, and we started to bring guests on. We actually were doing it every day there for a while, which because we had nothing else to do.
Yeah. What else? We got nothing.
and Danny Rocket was on the show for a while. And so it was me, Evan, and Danny, and we were bringing guests. We had a lot of great guests. We had some players, some journalists. We had Chris Bryant's dad, Mike Bryant. We had a lot of cool guys, minor league players. And so we're going to have a minor league player come on next Monday.
Okay. Before we do that, I do want to clear this up because I did pull this directly. Okay. Again, Chris Bryant himself has said nothing. Okay. Bryant's not said anything. If I look at the quote from Robert Murray, he said, according to sources, the expectation as of right now is that Bryant won't sign before the potential work. So again, that is all speculation, expectation. It goes along with what I've said that Bryant probably won't, but that's more a circumstance of the market as it unfolds, and not because he's saying like, I don't want to sign before this. It's simply a matter of that's the expectation. Although look at a lot of the other guys. He's a Boris client. People, oh, Boris, but who else is a Boris client? Max Scherzer's Boris, right? Corey Seager, Boris. Simeon, Boris, all that stuff. So the story was not really, well, yeah, it's when it says MLB World, the spun looks like trash, but when it says MLB World reacts to Bryant news, there was no Bryant news.
Dude, that website's the worst. God, that's all they say. That's what they say on every headline is the same.
Yeah. So
it's literally the same.
That's not
clickbait. That's clickbait.
Right. That is what clickbait is. People accuse us of clickbait. No, like I'm telling you what the story's about. That's bullshit because there was no Bryant news. That was wild stuff right there. Anyway.
Okay. That was a severe digression.
Yes. But I wanted to get that out there because we do have a hard stop coming up. So anyway, no. So the next 2 Mondays, we're actually going to have guests. This coming Monday, we are going to have Ethan Roberts, who was just added to the 40-man roster. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Great dude, really cool stuff there. And there's some I think some fun things we can cover there. Dude's got like elite spin rates. That's been something that's kind of fun to follow. Not a big dude whatsoever, but generates mid to upper 90s velocity and really showed out through the upper levels of the minors. And then the following Monday, we will have a return guest in Max Bain, who again, really cool stuff there. I got a little piece coming out about him later today, just on some breakout potential. And I had a ton of fun just picking his brain about baseball stuff. I know you and I were talking to him just about youth baseball and that sort of thing. So he'll be the following Monday. So the next two, we've got some pretty exciting young organizational pitchers. And Roberts is a guy who actually just had another baby. He's got 2 young kids at home. Just a really grounded kind of a dude who I had a lot of fun talking to when they came through town before. But I think we see him in Chicago next year, especially with the 40-man designation. So very, very cool stuff. And
probably.
And there'll be a lockout, so there probably won't be anything else.
It's kind of like COVID,
so,
right?
Yeah.
Like we came up with the idea for the show because we're like, man, we're going to be able to get plenty of guests, and people are just stuck at their houses, and that was the case. And the lockout's not quite COVID because people can like leave and do stuff, but there's not going to be any baseball activity, so they're just going to be like kind of on their own.
Other than when we had, during the pandemic shutdown, which is the only things we could write about were what was being proposed back and forth between the league and the players. So,
but the minor leaguers will not be locked out, right?
Right. The minor league,
totally different.
They're under a different, as long as they're not part, because they're not part of the union unless you're on a major league deal. So
they'll be able to access the minor league facilities to the extent that they can. Well, of course,
most of them aren't, they're nowhere near, most of them are just doing these, not like those guys are getting paid enough to be able to travel around and do much. So they're working out mostly at home yet. So, I mean, like I think Ethan's given lessons and doing work. Like that's what a lot of these guys do in the off season. No, Max is working with like a local travel organization. So I want to kind of pick their brains about that. Like I don't want to dig into it and get them in any kind of trouble. Like, hey, you guys aren't getting paid shit. So what do you got to do to make buy? But I do want to kind of understand what's in it, because when that's your job, when you're a professional athlete, you've got a hell of a lot of time during the off season. And a lot of these dudes do spend that, a lot of them just because they love it, and they'll work like at a local facility or with a travel program or whatever, to be able to help out those kids in the area where they were from. And again, like I said, with Ethan, he's got a newborn and like a 2-year-old. So he's got 2 young kids at home that he's working to help raise. So he's probably busier during the off season than he is during baseball. So
seriously,
no, but that'll be fun. It'll be good to catch up with those guys.
Cool. So expect more guests as long as the lockout lasts, which we expect that to last definitely into probably late January, early to mid-February. So we'll be doing that. And Brendan Davis would be a great guest. I'm not sure we could pull that one off, but hey,
we'll give it a shot. We'll see. Most of them don't have anything else going on. You know what we need to have? I'm so upset that we didn't have the first time around. We need to get Russ Dorsey on here.
For sure.
Because I want to, like, Russ is awesome, and I know he's got his own show going on, and a sports adjacent podcast, but that's another one. So anyway, hey, if you guys have, go ahead and throw out not now because we're about to end, but feel free to throw out some suggestions. I do not have much pull as a producer to really make all that happen, but we can try. Be interesting to see who you guys want to hear from. Minor leaguers are easier to get, by the way, than most of the other guys.
Just FYI. We've never had a major leaguer. Have we had a major leaguer? I don't think. Not at the time.
Ian Miller has gotten cups of coffee, so we did have him on.
Yeah, but he was a minor leaguer.
Alec Mills. Alec Mills. We had Alec.
Was he? Yeah, I guess he was.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he was. So, he was kind of like on the cusp. That was before he had thrown his no-hitter. And so then after he threw his no-hitter, we couldn't get him anymore.
He big timed us. No, he did want to come back on. It was just the timing didn't work at that point.
He's like on ESPN and
There's a lot of other people that are pulling for his time at that point. So yeah, it was a little tough. So
might be more important, but okay, cool. Well, hey everybody, have a wonderful week, and we'll probably circle back next week. We'll probably cut down to 1 show a week. I don't know if we were doing 2 shows a week there for a while or bouncing around, but probably makes sense with the lack of content to move to just 1 show a week. So anyways, until next week, have a great weekend. We will see you guys. Bye.
Cool. Later.